journey started probably this time last school year, because Kari and I were specializing, and I was the humanities teacher, and Kari was more of the STEM teacher. And we really felt like we went into that last year thinking it would make us more connected, and we'd be able to make stronger connections for our kids, and we felt quite the opposite with that. We felt like I knew what I was doing during my block, but not necessarily what they were doing once they left me. So we would always meet in the closet when our kids were working on things, and we started like dreaming how we could reinvent things and make it better for this year. And we'd say, wouldn't it be cool if the kids could just move back and forth between rooms, and if kids had choices in what they did and how they learned. And then we were discussing that at Easter dinner, at my family's Easter dinner, and Kara Smucker said, you guys need to read Students Taking Charge. So that's like how the book got put in our hands last Easter. And then we started reading, and we're like, yes, like this is what we want for kids. Like when you read that first chapter and it describes that classroom, like that's what we want for children, so that they want to come to school and they're excited about learning, and they understand why they're learning what they're learning, not just because my teacher told me to, because I have to take a test. So we were like yearning for something better, and we just like jumped in, because we had each other, so that definitely is a benefit, that we were able to support each other. And we had to work through like a lot of pieces. Little things like where were the kids going to keep their materials, because we thought about how we wanted to create learning space. So those of you who had the opportunity to visit us, you know that this is where we have our morning meetings, and this is our space where we gather together. Whole group lessons happen in here, and when children want a quieter, independent place to work, they come to this space. I purposely did not put enough desks for a classroom worth of children, because I didn't want them to feel like that was their desk, because where they work, their space is very fluid and flexible over the course of the day. You'll notice some children that did claim a desk, and there is some stuff inside of desks. Those kids needed that, and that was okay with us. We then, you can see our classroom library is here. Next door, we have tables, and that was for more collaborative work. And so that tends to be our noisier room. That's where they keep their belongings. Each child has a cubby to keep their stuff. And then you see here where the schedule, it was scary the first week, to be honest with you, because it was a whole change in like our mindset of what our roles were as teachers, and really being able to let things go and trust in the children. And I know I've said this to many of you before, but like by the second day, I was like, this is not working. Like, this is the worst. I can't do this. And then I just had to take a breath. And we literally made a list of, like, what are our concerns? What's not working? And then just, like, of that, tried to prioritize and say, like, what's the biggest barrier for us right now? Because we really believe in this. We want to make it happen for kids. So what's the first problem we need to solve? And then we would have classroom meetings with the kids and say what's working, what's not working. It was funny that they had no problem with thinking about having choices in when they worked on things and where they worked on things. At first, they were more concerned with, like, I don't want to keep my backpack there. And we're like, oh, we can fix that problem. Like, it was the little stuff at first that was catching them. But what we have seen in our children this year has surpassed what we imagined for them. Like, I'm not even joking. I could never go back to teaching like in a teacher-centered classroom as opposed to a student-centered classroom because of what our children have shown us they can do. In the beginning of the year, our class is definitely a diverse group of children and a diverse group of learners. And we had students who were unmotivated. And so, they come up on your radar very quickly. And so you need to keep them a little closer. So when kids are scheduling, for example, when kids are scheduling their day, those children have to check in and show their schedule to Kari or myself, and then they needed to check in with us after each block. And so we would literally use that as like a checklist of them accomplishing their learning goals for the day. We would find sometimes with a couple of children, we needed to check in with them even more frequently than within that block. So she had some that she monitored, I had some students I monitored, but I really think within this learning environment, children are so excited about the work that they're doing, that they're engaged in, that they are motivated.
And they get to pick, so they like that option, like, I don't have to do this, I could do this. So usually, sometimes with the projects and things like that, they are focusing on something that they actually would be interested in making or doing or learning about, so.
And if we have students who are, reluctant readers and they have other options to watch videos or to watch the online lessons and things like that. So we've seen a lot of attitudes change over the course of the year because, they have that felt need, they want to learn because they're excited about the project that they're working on, and they're actually able to have choices in what they do. It's not just everybody's doing this worksheet at the same time. So I think this is a good structure for all children. So when we're thinking about our gifted learners or our children who have learning disabilities, children who have 504s because they have ADHD, because they have flexibility and being able to move around the room, and they can sit in a chair or they can lie on the floor or sit on the cushion, they can go out in the middle of the pod if they need a quieter place. They can schedule their time, and if they need a brain break, they can take that and then get back to it. If they're reading and they're having a hard time focusing, then they can move on to something else on their must-do list. So, provides a lot of flexibility for children, and I think it's been successful with all of our kids.
I as well.
Right from the get-go. I know you said you both jumped in both feet, and I get that. But
Like the first day with our children? Do you mean like how
no,
did we
the
start?
first day of your planning together, like when you started brainstorming about how to really make this work.
We really were thinking about how we were going to build that sense of community and build in their routines. So even,
That's like regular.
yes. But like instead of the kids walking in and everybody's working on like back to school activities and getting to know you activities,
Yeah.
they actually, like, we broke them into we had a classroom meeting right off the bat. And then they found out who their home group was, which is, their group of people that they kind of belong to, and then they help each other. That's who they should go to first before they go to the teacher. They then had a list of choice activities, which would be the normal beginning of the year activities. So like move into your cubby and organize your materials. We didn't do it whole class. They scheduled a block to do it with their home team.
So you started them with schedules right away?
We did day one.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
They took. They
Did
learned
they
how
have
to.
choice the first day right away too?
They did. They did. One of their activities was they could attend a mini lesson on how to log on to Canvas, or they could read a how-to sheet on how to log on to our Canvas site. And then from there was a learning style quiz that they took right off the bat. And then we talked about discovering your learning style and why that matters, why is that important to know, and how that can guide you in choosing activities over the course of the year if you know what kind of learner you are.
So we really wish you had kept a journal and published it, and then that would really be very helpful.
Yes.
But I think even so, every year it's going to be different. Next year's group of children will be different, and the environment will be different, and you'll come up with a different problem that needs to be solved as you go. So there is no, this is the way to do it, because it does change and evolve.
And this year we had the benefit of having several children we had last year. And not that we were doing the same structure, but they had learned how to use different types of technology. They knew how to work together and to collaborate. So they were our leaders and our role models to guide the others. We're, thinking, what's this going to look like week one with a group of children that we don't know, who don't know us? That's going to be a whole new, experience. And then we'll just work through it. We had to negotiate a lot, I think at first, like letting go of that thought of blocks of instructional time, like that 90-minute reading block and having 60 minutes for math and things like that, because we just let all that go. And that was, I think, a hard one for me because I was like, we need like this 90-minute reading block and it has to look like this. And then I finally and Kari would just let me talk and talk it out. And then eventually I finally came to but why? Am I thinking that because that's how it's always been, or because it makes good sense for kids? So then I just said, okay, fine. It's fine. We'll just look at our whole day as like a blank canvas and then think about, and that provided us flexibility in being able to then think, okay, when do we need to deliver benchmark lessons? When can we meet with small groups? When are we going to conference with children? Because that opened the entire day up for us instead of just saying we have 60 minutes of math time, 90 minutes for reading.
So is that kind of like how you structure more down? Like these are the benchmark lessons that we think for. Did you kind of plan your benchmark like through by the units and then broke it down from there?
Standards, units, lessons.
Well, with ELA, we were adopting our new resources with ReadyGen, and because I had worked to help write the 5th grade tasks, I was trying to use them with integrity and try them out to see how it was working and to try to dig into those ReadyGen materials. And so we would do shared reading each day for at least the first quarter. And we divided the kids into 2 groups, and they were just heterogeneous groups.
Right. And
I would just schedule it 2 different times during the day. A shared reading. I tried to keep it short, but that's where I was delivering, the lesson. Then there would be times where I'd offer small groups, either for those kids that needed additional support, or for some of those, to practice maybe some of the standards. And then,
Were those choice groups, or you made?
Sometimes we invited. We said, oh, we really would like you to come to this.
Yeah.
Or if you feel like you could use some extra, and then, in the beginning I feel like they were a little more reluctant to sign up, but after the first quarter, they would be like, no, I want to go there. I'm like, put your name up then. Yeah. So sometimes we would invite or highly suggest, and then other times they would just sign up on their own, which was nice.
And then what's happened naturally is they will, in morning meeting, request small groups. So with, they'll see what's there, and then they'll ask us, like, can we schedule a small group to work on how to add quotations in dialogue? Or can we schedule a small group today about simplifying fractions? Because and then other kids would be like, oh yeah, I need to go to that. And then we would just negotiate a time, put it on the board, and then kids would fill that in on their schedule if they needed to join that group.
I would say the first month or so, we sat down in the morning as well as after the kids went home, just to kind of start hashing some things out, because there were some things that we were both like, this is not working. We asked the kids a couple times a week what wasn't working for them, and it was weird things like their backpacks, they didn't know where to put them, or their lunch boxes, or stuff like that wasn't really bothering us, but it was things that they were so used to that they kind of had to get. Yeah, it really was. They were like, I don't know where to put my backpack. And they didn't they were like, well, I don't like it there, but I like it here. And then, so we were kind of, at the end of it, we were like, well, wherever you feel comfortable putting it, put it there.
And then when it comes to them learning things, we'll offer mini lessons, create how-to sheets for the kids who can just read the directions and figure it out, post videos for things, so they have different pathways to get that information.
I think that's a big difference, is it's not saying here are these activities that you must complete, but you can complete them whenever. Is that, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that more, the idea of you can either learn it this way or that way, but then how do you set do you have a certain formative that you require so that your little quick check-in, so that whichever way they learned it, they got to the same place?
For math, it was easier. Math, I felt it was a little different because it was really hard for me to make sure that they were getting everything that they needed based on certain projects and things. There were projects that we did that would reinforce or preview, but I just didn't feel comfortable enough trying to find a project that went with every single standard, because there's so many different things that they had to learn. So we put on Canvas, my whole math course was on Canvas, and we gave them several different options for math, but within each option was some sort of check-in, whether it was a Canvas something or other, an Adobe Voice, some sort of technology something, or sometimes it just ended up being the unit assessment. that we would always have little check-ins throughout their journey through that unit, and then we could kind of check.
There's a lot of pre-planning that goes into it. But once we've created our task and our rubric and like our activity list and we've established expectations with the kids, then they just drive that for the next several weeks.
So did you create tasks for math and science when you could, and then if not, it was more of a traditional, this is what we're learning, we need to learn? Or did you create a task for every math and science unit?
We were trying to balance for them because there were times they would say to us like,
Too many.
it's too much. And they were very vocal about that because they always had the ELA task because we were, that was a big focus for the district this year. Math we felt like was a little bit harder, but we did one as a 5th grade that was STEM based. So math was kind of its own thing. Social studies was all problem based this year. And
With ELA for the most part, and there were a couple that were not.
well, they had to do research and things like that, but because of, like I would say Unit 1 for ELA was very science-based, so that was connected with language arts and science during that time. And then we had, we had some concerns with like the scope and sequence of ReadyGen versus the scope and sequence of our science and our social studies. And they didn't want us to play around with that too much this year, so we did it sometimes. Yeah.
I'll edit that out.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a lot of learning this year. We're trying to learn a new series with ReadyGen and understanding that and staying true to those ELA tasks and then creating tasks for the other pieces. But social studies, I think we did a good job with that. Science was probably, when we're thinking it's, an FCAT year with 5th grade, we need to make sure we get all your content in. So that oftentimes was just creating units where the kids had different activity lists and choices of how they learned and different activities they could do. But even like with science experiments, we rarely did whole group science experiments. We would just print out the directions, put them up, put out the materials on the table, and they would schedule when to do it. And then once everybody had done it, we would come back together and debrief and talk about our conclusions.
Which is good because then you don't have to have all of the materials for an entire whole class and the same.
We knew that everyone was going to need a computer, so we made them schedule it by like, these 3 are on this number, so you need to work together to figure out who's going to use it and when. They had a lot of time, they had some time during morning meeting where if it was a group project they needed to get together, we built that time in so they could talk and they could, kind of hash it out, say, well, I need to do this here, can we please do it? So they're working on a lot of different skills throughout that, negotiating their time with each other.
And they've learned a lot of technology this year. With Canvas, like Kari said, the whole math course was on there. With reading, they would do a lot of posts on Canvas and respond to each other. We did Padlet activities and things like that where we would post that right on Canvas and then get us access it through there.
My particular class this year, and just some of the simple things that they need to do. It's like, a lot of times I have to give them a lot of direction. What is your thought about other grade levels doing this? Because I know that 5th graders, of course, are a lot more mature than 3rd graders, and they probably could take on more responsibility. But if you were told that you had to teach 3rd grade, would you say the same thing?
Yeah. Lisa, what's been your experience in kindergarten? I know you've been trying it.
Oh, I'm at the point, I haven't let go yet from, every, doing it through the whole entire day where they do schedules yet, because my little babies, are just happy that they're in school and they're worried about lunchtime and everything else. So I haven't done really the whole, they have to do the scheduling. I've kind of told them that they have to work on a subject and they have free range to choose whatever skill they want to work on. Especially for math, they kind of have review centers where they do things, they're just exploring and just playing with it. And what I found is they've learned things that I never could imagine them to come up with. Like, I would have never went and taught them it. Our number of the day, for instance, was 14 yesterday, and one of their tasks they have to do every day is complete a journal. And that's something that they leave it on their desk, and then I go around and I make sure that they did it. And one of the students wrote 20 minus 6 equals 14. And so I said to him, I'm like, how did you come up with that? And he goes, well, if there's 2 tens frames, it's 20, and if you take away 6 of them, then it's 14. And I was like that's something I didn't teach him. I just taught him tens frames and putting tens frames together and what it looks like, but I didn't teach him that. And that's almost like, I mean, you're jumping almost into second grade skills, but the way that he was able to figure it out on his own, it was pretty amazing. They'll surprise me. I said this to Billy when she came in from observation. When we were doing math, I saw the kids drawing pictures, and I was like, it's not writing time, it's not reading time, it's not writing time. It's like, you gotta put that away. I don't wanna see drawing pictures. And all of a sudden they came over and they're like, yeah, but I'm making an addition story. Look, it's 3 kids sitting on the carpet and 2 more are joining. And I was like, insert foot into mouth. So like that's the things where I didn't see it like that. And I didn't give him that idea. They just did it on their own. And that's what I've seen that I've liked about it, is that they're learning things because they're testing their own skills and testing their own selves and trying to push themselves, where I would never have came up with those ideas. But you do have the kids that are, for me at least, that are kind of off task a little bit, so you have to just watch to make sure. But that part I'm really loving.
Lisa, talk about
they're controlling it.
that task where you were going to limit it to just one country.
So they had kindergarten's ELA task was to explore the world after and pick out a country that they want to research. We decided to have our kids make pamphlets. So I brought some old pamphlets from around the school and around my house and showed them what a pamphlet was. I kind of explained it to them, but I had let them pick which country they wanted to choose. And now the problem I had is they're not as much accountable as 5th graders are. So for me, I kind of had to make sure I was still monitoring what they were doing and making sure that they had an idea. But they ran to the media center, said, Ms. Wagner, we need books on China. I don't know, any books. And I said, just pick out any books. It doesn't have to be books they can read. They can just look through the pictures. So then they found books. They wanted to read it. They wanted to look at it. They wanted to explain to the class, because their purpose was to explain to the class about their country. They schedule, I didn't really do scheduling, but we sat down and like every other day, kind of, I made time with each country, and we sat down and we Googled things, and we were looking, they were like sitting on my lap, and we were all looking at my computer, trying to search images for like different clothing, and they would run to the printer after I printed out, and they'd color it in, and they'd put it in their thing, and then they would go and start writing about it. That was the part where I was like, wow, this is really meaningful, like this is powerful for them.
Well, and you had told them you were going to just do one country, and they were like revolted.
Yeah, they were dead against it. They were like, no, but I wanted to do this one, and you already gave me the choice to do so many, and then, but that was just one of the tasks that I did. I'm trying to do the breaking whole scheduling thing, because right now we all do math at the same time, and we all do reading at the same time, because I run into that accountability piece that I have a problem with. Like,
And I think
And it's
that's
just-
okay.
It's
Like,
working out the system too. Like we've started talking about next year, what a system could you put in place, what structure that would make it work so that she knows what they're doing and when they're doing it.
I mean, and it's easy with kindergarten, because this is the first time they're coming in, and they're coming from VPK. VPK is, I mean, maybe they have an hour of instruction a day, where they're playing most of the day and exploring. So it's actually really beneficial, because then they're having that time to explore and do things on their own. It's the collaborative piece that I saw in my class that has like really grown. And they'll like say, they'll walk over to a group and say, oh, what are you doing? And so this kid was like, oh, I'm just taking cubes and adding 2 more to each stack. And that's what he was doing. And so then the other one, now the next one on, put 3 more to each stack. And then they're writing, I see them writing addition sentences. 2 plus 3 equals 5. 5 plus 3 equals 8. 8 plus 3 equals, and they just kept going. And I was like, okay. Like, I didn't teach them, I mean, I did teach them what they needed for addition, but they are taking it on their own and learning it. And that's where I think is the best part.
Well, I think the important point that you bring up there is, open-ended tasks, and really allowing children to, ask questions and wonder about things and to research and seek their answers, which is so important, because then we're developing their thinking skills instead of just telling them, what they're going to learn and how they're going to learn it, and giving them activities where we're leading them to one right answer, that we're allowing them to make those discoveries for themselves. And that's so important.
And like our kids still need a lot of direction. Like there are times where like, okay, you didn't get what we're doing, go do this and then come back. Now tell me what you're going to do. So like there's certain ones that we're like, you need to check in with us a lot, and we still have a lot that are like, I need a pencil. Okay. You know, so like that will never, I don't think, go away, but they can handle a lot more than what I would have ever given them credit for.
Well, and back to that point too, like, because Tori, you know, this grew out of your kind of need because, like, with your class, you felt like this year, I can't teach math whole group. Like, there's no way these kids can it's like craziness. So giving them choice and freedom, and it frees you up to not try and corral them all at the same time to do the same thing.
Yeah, it was like, and I'm just like very dabble like with it, but even just giving them the choice of, like you said, do I want to watch a video? And there were some kids that I'm like you said, you are invited to meet me at 1:15 for that, and they were starting to get that, and like the kids that were already like 3s on the scale coming in, they then went to that next step and were teaching the other kids how to do things. But what I found most is also my morning flowed just so differently, even just giving them a couple choice, because, and I know like you were saying, Robin, like you see my class every day, but they're very hard to stay on task, but once I gave them this, I had 0 behavior problems. 0. And they did not lie about it. They would literally go, sorry, I didn't hit submit, I need to go down on the chart, I didn't do my work. Like, I didn't do it. Or I didn't have enough time, so it'll be interesting.
And that's the
with
same
babies.
thing, like, we do the journal of the day, they have to answer their question, and then I'll walk around and check to see if they did it or they didn't do it, and I'll close their journal, and that's how they know to put it away. And if they didn't, and they need extra support, we put it on my desk, and then I sit with them together and we do it together. And now there are sometimes I'll put something up and they'll try it and they'll just close the journal and put it on my desk. And like they just know now that they're just gonna need the extra help to answer it. And they're not even gonna get frustrated that they can't do it. They're just gonna wait for me to sit there with them. And that's fine too, if they know that they need the extra help for it. But really, I'll tell you the reason why I jumped into this whole thing. This is my niece and nephew are in Donna and Kari's class. And we were sitting down at dinner and they were discussing how they had to get this done and they had to get that done, and then did you see how they did this project? And I didn't ask them about their day, this is what they were coming out and talking about. And I thought it was really amazing that we weren't even in school and yet they're sitting there saying like what they're excited about to do the next day and what they have to schedule and start working for. And I was like, wow, my niece was not one that really loved school very much at the beginning, right? And she's totally changed. I mean, she just wants to be here, she wants to learn, she wants to push herself, she wants to see what she can learn more of. And just hearing her talk about it, I was like, wow, like something's powerful in this learning. I don't know if it's the accountability piece but something's powerful. And that's when I was like, I'm gonna try it out and see, because if it works for them, then it's gotta work for kindergarten as well. So thank you.
Would you recommend starting out with like one subject or just all in?
I feel like it's kind of hard, like if you give them that little sprinkle of like, for this subject, we're gonna do that, and then pull them back in, it might be, I enjoyed, but that's just kind of like the way my brain works, I'm all in, or I'm just not gonna do it type of person.
We
and
jump
we
in
went
and then
through
we're
a
like,
lot.
we'll figure it out
Yeah.
as we go. But like if you're specializing and you have like your 2-hour STEM block or your 2-hour ELA block, I think, you can think about giving them some choice within that block. I don't think it has to be across the whole day right away.
So one teacher alone could do
I think it would be hard then for them to then go next door and be in a traditional teacher-centered classroom.
But I mean, if you
aren't
kids all day.
specializing. If you're not
I would
specializing,
still
it's
do it.
easier. Then you're fine
Yeah.
because you're only worrying about
Mhm.
your own day.
And then you might get more comfortable and then try another subject. I mean, ideally, you would create an authentic learning unit that pulled in your literacy skills, like your reading and writing, listening, and speaking skills with a content area, so that you're blending that. Math sometimes is its own thing, but then you're accomplishing your language arts goals and your social studies goals at the same time, or language arts and science goals at the same time.
And that's really is a key too, I think, is the idea of, you know, that these hit multiple standards, these activities and things that they're working on are doing multiple standards, because you can't plan an activity board for 6 different subjects. Like, it just isn't feasible, and it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't work that way. Yeah. So like 2, you know, kind of big things, or maybe a math one separate if it has to be, or a science if it had to be separate, but where you can.
We usually probably had 2 tasks going at the same time.
I think one time we tried 3 big projects and they were like,
Too much, yeah.
You're like, this is too much.
we can't get everything done.
Yeah. Cause I could see where it'd be more authentic learning, because if I'm learning these ELA standards while working in science, me, as a learner, I would do better than just to be over here doing ELA and then, switch over here to
Balance
science.
my social studies time or my science time, yes.
Did you utilize the anchor
Then
text
one
with
line,
everybody?
so it was just a resource.
So for unit 1, we started off with a chapter book that fit into what we were learning in science. So we were able to blend the task for ELA, and then I also made a science menu that supported that, because we were learning about the interaction of living things. So they had some science learning they were doing at the same time. We were reading this book and thinking about this character's journey as he's solving an environmental problem, and then their task was they had to create a narrative in which a character is solving an environmental problem. So it tied in there. The second text, I think we decided it was not engaging for students, so we didn't use it. As a 5th grade team, we decided we were not going to use it. And then our second one, I think, was Finding Courage, and we did use the texts for that. And so that was more integrated with social studies with that task. And then the solar system, we used the books, both books were strong. But to be honest with you, I have not used the teacher guide. What's that little book?
Workbook.
The reader response notebook?
Okay, so we haven't touched that.
No, that's so.
That other little one.
Yeah. Oh, the text
little-
The text collection.
No, we've used some things in the text collection.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sleuths.
okay, we haven't used that. The reading and writing journal, I just didn't feel like that was purposeful, that I could create better questions for my kids to respond to, and they would do
But that,
Canvas posts.
I think that's kind of the question is, so the children were given a set amount of something to read, and they had some sort of a response or discussion question to do, which would have been the question you would ask a whole group to the group, and one kid would answer, but this way, every child had to answer it, so you knew that they had read that and that they had understood that material. Is that kind of what you were asking,
So
is
they
how
didn't
do you
have a choice
manage?
whether or not to read the book, like they had to read it, everybody had to read it. And everybody had to respond a certain way, or?
Did you sit and read all these responses?
We had lots of Canvas posts that they
We're
could
on Canvas.
do once a week. Sometimes she would pull them into like whole groups a couple times a week to go over the readings that they had done and stuff like that. So.
We used some of the leveled readers, like as we were trying to pull like text sets about a topic around a task, we used some of the leveled readers for that. But some of the 5th grade books were very strong, and the ones that we felt like were not, we just didn't use them.
And so when you saw like the task, like the district task, did you then like sit together and break down like, to do this task, these are the benchmark lessons, I feel that they're gonna need, like, these are the skills they're gonna need to
As a
complete?
5th grade team, the ELA teachers, like we would take the task in the rubric and look at the standards, and then we like created a unit plan.
Okay.
And like thinking about those key benchmark lessons that you need throughout. But not really I mean, I would say, I didn't rely too much on the teachers.
Right,
Because you get lost in it because there's so much that we just had to take a step back, and sometimes there'd be a couple of good questions to use to guide, text-based discussions, but certainly not page by page. It's not.
And for your kids that were struggling readers that you knew could not access that text on their own independently, you had the flexibility to be able to pull them and read it with them.
Well, it's probably so nice because you have more freedom and when you can schedule like those kids that really need maybe interventions in certain areas.
And then on the other side of the coin, then I could schedule time for my kids who needed enrichment, who needed to be pushed. Where just reading that book was not enough because, I have a student who reads a book a day. So he can read the whole book